If budgeting feels harder than dealing with your toddler's tantrums, you might be able to relate to this mom who wrote, I understand the concept of a budget, money in minus money out. It's just simple math. So why is it so hard? I'm a mom, I'm keeping tiny humans alive, but somehow managing our money feels harder than dealing with my toddler's tantrums. I honestly feel like I should have figured this out by now. So I think that a lot of people actually find themselves in a similar situation. I kind of like to think of budgeting as like riding a bike. Like you can understand the concepts of like pedaling and balancing and, steering and all of that, but it's a lot more challenging when you first start riding a bike. But then once you understand and you feel confident with the system, it feels supernatural. It's a skill that you'll never forget. But I definitely want to kind of delve more into this topic today, but we're just going to start off our conversation with the ultimate goal of making it easy because that is your biggest challenge. Your budget feels really hard. Now, you don't specifically call out in your submission what about it is hard, but we can always continue this conversation in the comments later, or you can feel free to submit a follow-up question by using the link in the description below. So some questions to ask yourself is why does it feel hard? So if you have already sat down to do your budget and there's not enough money to make it to the end of the month or make it to the next paycheck, yeah, that's going to feel really hard because you're trying to prioritize what portion of your life is going to be eliminated or decreased or cut. And sometimes if you are on a really tight budget to begin with, there may not be any portion that you can effectively eliminate or reduce because you're already on such a limited income. Now, if it's just the fact that you have whatever system you're using is really hard, you're finding it super clunky or cumbersome, then you might actually need to look at using a different budgeting system or process for how you approach your budget. There's several different systems out there, but just to kind of throw them out into the conversation that we're having today, there's different apps that you can use to budget. There's the envelope system. I personally use a spreadsheet. This is what I have found to be just the method that my brain can gravitate towards. You might find it hard because whatever system you're utilizing is not really the best system that naturally fits with you, right? If you are finding that a spreadsheet is super cumbersome and it's way too much manual entry, then maybe an app would work better for you. But if you're finding that you're, on a learning curve of actually utilizing an app, there's too many things to sync up, you have to learn a completely new software, then maybe a spreadsheet would be better for you. If you deal mostly in cash and you don't want to have to record all of your receipts or, track all of your expenses, maybe the cash envelope system would work better for you. So identifying sometimes if it's the system that you're using that's actually the hard part, it can be helpful for you to evaluate, do you need to use a different system that's going to make it simpler for you? Some other reasons why it might feel hard for you is that you just haven't put in the reps for it to feel easy. Just like when we think of our kids and our babies learning how to crawl, it takes several attempts. It takes a lot of effort for them to learn all of those skills, all of the coordination to actually get up and crawl. When we think about budgeting, even though we understand the concept, again, simple math, income minus expenses, it's a lot more than just that sometimes in our minds, we say, oh, this should be simple, this should be super easy. And then we feel like an idiot when we can't figure out the actual systemized steps to work a budget and actually translate that into our lifestyle because it's a lot more than just basic math. And yet we have this perception that, okay, it is simple math, therefore it should be simple. And that's why I think a lot of people give up on budgeting is because there's typically a lot more involved with it. It's a lot of, behavior modifications and deciding what is going to take priority in this season of life. How do I need to evaluate what I'm spending my money on? So there's a lot more thought process involved in it and not just the basic math numbers. Where you're sitting is where a lot of people find themselves being, and people that are successful at budgeting, once they get enough reps in, then it feels very normal to them because they have gone through enough situations where they are okay, I understand the system, I understand the process of how to adjust my budget, how to adjust my lifestyle, even if it feels uncomfortable, they recognize okay, I've been in this sort of terrain before, it might be a little bumpy, but I know how to balance. Sometimes we have this expectation that we're going to be experts when we first start out, when to be an expert in something, you usually have to do it for like 10 years. Like I've been budgeting with the system that my husband and I have for 15 years. When I think about when I sit down to do our budget on our spreadsheet, like, does it take time? Yes, but it doesn't feel hard to me because I've been doing it for so long. But you need to evaluate what is going to feel simple for you. Is it going to be an app? Is it going to be those cash envelopes? So thinking about what may meet your current situation and circumstance for your lifestyle for you to be successful, so that way you can budget and it not feel hard. Again, we want to default back to that question of, if this was simple, what would it look like for me? Because if it's not simple and it is super cumbersome and it is, challenging, then that is going to cause an opportunity for you to just say, I'm going to quit, because it is not meeting the expectations that you have. So even though you may feel that learning a certain system is hard, it should, as you go about budgeting, it should start to feel a little bit more natural. It shouldn't be quite as challenging as you learn whatever system or process you have and you start implementing it more. One of the reasons I think that sometimes people also find it really hard to budget is that they get super stuck in all of the details of their budget. Like when they set up their budget, they feel like, okay, I can't possibly overspend in this category, or if I did, I blew my budget, like this stuff doesn't work, right? Where our life fluctuates based off of what is happening and the situations that we find ourselves in throughout life. There are certain aspects of your life that are going to change. You have made a plan for something. Let's say you had made a plan to eat at home for dinner, but something happened, and then here you are going through the drive-through and busting your budget. And I think sometimes we, especially as moms, we're so overwhelmed and exhausted through all the other things in our life that it's just like finding the effort and the mental capacity to go into budgeting and figuring out a system that is going to work for us. And then when we feel like we've busted our budget and we've failed, well, why am I going to put the effort in to even try? Because it's another portion of our life that's identifying me as a failure, and I feel like a failure in so many other areas of my life. So I'll just continue living how I have been without setting up a budget, because you don't want to face another reality of another metric in your life telling you that you're failing as a mom. When really because we have this stringent idea of what a budget means and how then we have to like modify our entire lifestyle to fit into this rigid portion of what our budget says that we have to live by, or what our budgeting app says, hey, you can't overspend in this category. That is, I think, another big hindrance for why so many people start budgeting and then they immediately just kind of like chuck it out the window because it is so challenging and so hard. Well, really, we need to realize that our budget is supposed to flex and breathe and like change based off of the situations that we experience in our lifestyle and day to day. If you're running into a situation where you're just like, can anyone else relate to me? Because I feel like I'm like a lone solo person out here in this vast world and no one else is struggling with that. So if that's you, then you can actually find a link to join me and other moms on a monthly basis and go through some of these challenges that do pop up. Another reason why you may be finding budgeting hard is because sometimes I think that we build it up in our brain that we have to be absolutely perfect at it. And then that leads us to like perfection paralysis, right? So I personally have dealt with a lot of perfectionism in my past. It was like, if I'm not going to be perfect at it, then there's no reason to attempt it. Where just like when you learn to ride a bike, you have to be willing to fail to be able to learn the skill of riding your bike and balancing on your bike. Just like you have to learn the skill of being able to balance your budget. This really negative expectation, probably from all of our schooling, you have to meet this standard. Whereas really in the course of our life, especially once we become adults, part of parenting is failing. When we try something with our child and we're like, well, that didn't work, right? We have gained some knowledge and experience to be able to make another attempt and have more ability for success because we have more information to be able to move ahead and make the next action. So sometimes I think that because we have this expectation that, okay, if I'm going to do this, then it has to be perfect and I have to live within this really rigid budget and I can't deviate it. And once my numbers are set, I can't change that. Well, yeah, that would feel really hard. And I will tell you firsthand, that is not how I budget myself. Like, there are so many times when I set out our budget for the month and we start with a certain amount of numbers, but then it changes. Never ever have I shouldn't say never because I'm sure there could have been at some point in the past, but the majority of the time, I do not get to the end of the month and have the same numbers in the same spot of my budget as when I started the month out. And that's okay. Again, we've got to learn that our budget can breathe and move and adjust to our lifestyle. And if you're having the expectation that your budget shouldn't change as you go through life, then yeah, it can be really hard. And if you are making an adjustment to your budget mid-month or mid-paycheck, how often you're budgeting for, that's not failing. That's actually learning and realizing and honing your budget into a better fit for your lifestyle and the season of life that you're currently in. And so if you, again, have this mindset that everything in your budget has to be perfect, and then when you sit down and you realize, okay, well, yep, we overspent in that category, or no, we didn't quite, meet this expectation or meet this threshold, and you're assuming that as a failure, then yeah, that would be really hard. There's this one quote by Henry Ford that I actually love, identifies the mindset that we have going into managing our budget or really all aspects of our life. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right. If this is something that you're like, okay, I know that this is a mindset thing. This isn't the fact that my system is challenging, or I have identified the system that will feel super simple for me and I do think that I can be successful, but you're still feeling this overwhelming feeling of dread. I just actually put out another episode with a mom that basically said exactly that she feels an overwhelming dread whenever she goes to do her finances. So I'll link up that for you next. But if you made it this far into the episode, now it's your turn. I would love for you to go ahead and drop your thoughts in the comments below and we can continue the conversation down there. But if you found this episode helpful and would like to hear other similar conversations, I'll link up a playlist for you to watch next.